The hotel ballroom sparkled with 1,000 tiny lights, each one reflecting off champagne flutes and designer dresses that cost more than my annual rent. I stood near the service entrance, my hands clasped tightly around a silver tray of hors d'oeuvres, watching the glittering crowd through the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones after working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Christmas music drifted through the air, some jazz version of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas that probably cost more to license than I'd see in a month. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with pine from the towering Christmas tree in the corner, its ornaments catching the light like frozen stars. My feet ached in the cheap heels I'd bought at a discount store, the kind that pinch your toes but look professional enough that the catering manager wouldn't send me home. I was invisible here, just another server in a black vest and white shirt, weaving between people who wouldn't remember my face, even if I served them directly, and that was fine. I preferred it that way. Being invisible meant being safe, being unnoticed, being able to collect my paycheck and leave without drama. Then I saw him. Marcus stood near the bar, his arm draped possessively around a woman in a red dress that probably cost more than my car. Her laugh was loud and sharp, cutting through the music like glass breaking. My ex-boyfriend looked exactly the same. Same cocky smile, same perfectly styled hair, same way of looking at everyone like they existed solely for his entertainment. My stomach twisted. I hadn't seen him since he'd walked out 6 months ago, leaving me with nothing but unpaid bills and a broken heart I'd carefully stitched back together with long work hours and stubborn pride. I turned quickly, nearly colliding with another server. The tray wobbled dangerously, but I steadied it, my heart hammering against my ribs. I needed to stay on the opposite side of the room. I needed to finish my shift and leave before he noticed me, but fate, it seemed, had other plans. "Oh my God, is that Emma?" Marcus's voice carried across the ballroom, amplified by alcohol and cruelty. Several heads turned. I froze, my fingers gripping the tray so hard my knuckles went white. "Emma!" He was walking toward me now, the woman in red following with a smirk painted across her perfect lips. "I didn't know you were working here. Wait, are you actually serving drinks?" The contempt in his voice made my cheeks burn. A small circle was forming around us, curious faces drawn to the spectacle like moths to flame. "I'm working," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Excuse me, I need to—" "Working as a server?" The woman in red laughed, a sound like nails on a chalkboard. "Marcus, you dated a waitress? That's so cute." "She wasn't always this pathetic," Marcus said, his eyes scanning me from head to toe with obvious disdain. "What happened, Emma? I thought you were going to finish your degree." "Oh, wait. You couldn't afford it, could you? Not after I stopped helping you out." My throat tightened. Several people were openly staring now, their conversations dying as they tuned into the drama unfolding before them. I wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, to be anywhere but here. "You never helped me out," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "You just took. Marcus laughed, harsh and cruel. "I gave you the best 6 months of your life, and this is how you repay me? By embarrassing yourself at a party like this? Jesus, Emma, have some dignity." The woman in red leaned into him, whispering something that made him grin wider. My vision blurred with unshed tears. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of these people who looked at me like I was entertainment, a cautionary tale to whisper about later. I started to turn away when Marcus grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin through the thin fabric of my shirt. "Don't walk away from me," he hissed. "I'm not done talking to you." "Let go," I said, trying to pull free, but his grip tightened. "Make me." The ballroom had gone almost silent now. The music still playing, but the conversations dead. Everyone was watching. Some with pity, most with the kind of morbid curiosity people reserve for car accidents and reality TV. Then I felt it. A shift in the air, a change in temperature that had nothing to do with the room's climate control. The crowd parted like water around stone, and even Marcus's grip loosened slightly as his attention moved past my shoulder. The scent hit me first, expensive cologne, something dark and woody with notes of leather and smoke. Then came the presence, a weight that settled over the room like a physical thing. I turned my head, following Marcus's suddenly pale expression. The man walking toward us was young, maybe early 30s, but carried himself with the kind of authority that age couldn't grant. His suit was impeccable, black and perfectly tailored to a body that spoke of discipline and power. Dark hair, dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. 2 men flanked him, both built like walls and wearing identical expressions of casual menace. But it was his face that caught me, beautiful in the way dangerous things are beautiful. Sharp angles and full lips, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes that held absolutely no warmth as they fixed on Marcus's hand still gripping my arm. The entire ballroom held its breath. He stopped 3 feet away from us, and I noticed the way the crowd instinctively gave him space. The way conversations didn't just die but seemed to evaporate in his presence. One of his guards murmured something in his ear, too quiet for me to hear, but those dark eyes never left Marcus's face. "You're hurting her." His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but it carried through the silence like a knife through silk. There was an accent there, subtle but present, Italian maybe, or something close to it. Marcus's hand dropped from my arm as if I'd burned him. We were just talking. It's none of your... It became my business the moment you put your hands on her. The man took a step closer, and Marcus actually backed up, bumping into the woman in red, who had gone very still and very quiet. "Apologize." "What?" "I don't even know who you..." "I wasn't asking." Those dark eyes flicked to me for just a moment, and I felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. Something in my chest tightened, a warning or a promise. I couldn't tell which. Then he looked back at Marcus. "Apologize to the lady. Now." Marcus's face had gone from pale to red to pale again. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out who this man was, why everyone in the ballroom had gone so quiet, why even the other wealthy guests were giving them a wide berth. I'm sorry, Emma," Marcus stammered. The man tilted his head slightly, not sincere. "Try again." Something in Marcus's eyes sparked with his old arrogance, alcohol making him stupid. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but..." He didn't finish the sentence. The man didn't move, didn't make a sound, but one of his guards did. A single step forward, and Marcus flinched so hard he nearly fell over his own feet. "I'm sorry!" Marcus practically shouted. "Jesus, I'm sorry, okay? Emma, I'm sorry, we're leaving." He grabbed the woman in red's hand and practically dragged her toward the exit, their expensive shoes clicking rapidly against the marble floor. Several other guests suddenly discovered urgent reasons to be somewhere else, the crowd thinning as people made themselves scarce. I stood frozen, still holding the tray, my heart racing so fast I felt dizzy. The man turned to face me fully, and up close. He was even more devastating. His eyes weren't just dark, they were nearly black, with a depth that suggested violence and secrets, and things I shouldn't want to know about. "Are you hurt?" he asked, and his voice was different now, softer, though no less commanding. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and his fingers brushed against my arm where Marcus had grabbed me. His touch was surprisingly gentle, his skin warm against mine. I shivered, though the room wasn't cold. "You'll bruise," he said, more to himself than to me. Then those eyes met mine again, and I felt trapped, pinned by the intensity of his gaze. "Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight?" The question should have seemed strange, overly personal, but somehow it didn't. Yes. Home. After my shift. Your shift is over." It wasn't a suggestion. He turned to one of his guards. "Make sure the management knows. She's done for the evening, full pay." "Wait, I can't just..." I started, but he was already looking at me again, and the words died in my throat. "You're shaking." He shrugged off his jacket, impossibly expensive, I could tell from the weight of the fabric alone, and draped it over my shoulders before I could protest. It smelled like him, that dark cologne and something else, something uniquely masculine that made my head spin. "Sit. You need a moment." "I'm fine," I lied. But my legs chose that moment to betray me, going weak at the knees. His hand caught my elbow, steadying me, and suddenly I was being guided to one of the plush chairs near the edge of the room. I collapsed into it, the tray finally leaving my hands as one of the other servers materialized to take it. The man crouched down in front of me, putting us at eye level. And I noticed for the first time the way his suit pulled across his shoulders, the elegant watch on his wrist that probably cost more than my entire life. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma." My voice sounded small, foreign. "Emma." He said it like he was tasting it, rolling it around in his mouth. "I'm Dante." Dante. The name fit him somehow. Dark, dangerous, with the edge of something forbidden. "Thank you," I managed, for what you did." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. No one should be treated that way, especially not by a coward who doesn't know the worth of what he had. The way he said it made heat bloom in my cheeks. Before I could respond, someone approached. A nervous-looking man in an expensive suit who kept his distance and his voice respectful. "Sir, the car is ready whenever you—" "Not yet." Dante didn't look away from me. "Emma needs a moment." The man nodded and retreated immediately. I watched him go, confused, piecing together the puzzle of this stranger who had appeared like an avenging angel and scattered my tormentors with nothing more than his presence. "Who are you?" I whispered. Dante smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Someone who believes in protecting beautiful things from being damaged. Before I could process that, before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something in his expression hardened. When he looked back at me, there was regret there, subtle, but present. "I have to go." He stood, all fluid grace and coiled power. "But I need you to do something for me, Emma." "What?" He pulled a card from his pocket, heavy cardstock, expensive, with nothing but a phone number embossed in black. "If he bothers you again, if anyone bothers you, you call this number. Understand?" I took the card with shaking fingers. "I don't understand why you don't need to understand." His hand cupped my cheek, the touch achingly gentle, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "Just promise me you'll call if you need help." I nodded, unable to form words with him touching me like that, with those dark eyes boring into mine like he could see straight through to my soul. "Good girl," he murmured, and the praise sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with something I didn't want to name. Then he was gone, his guards following, the crowd parting once again. I watched him disappear through the main entrance, and it was only after the door closed behind him that I realized I was still wearing his jacket, that I was clutching his card like a lifeline, and that somewhere in the last 10 minutes, my entire world had tilted on its axis. The hotel manager appeared at my elbow, nervous and obsequious. Miss Emma? You're free to go for the evening, with full pay, as requested. And if you ever need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call us." I nodded numbly, gathering my things, still wrapped in Dante's jacket because I couldn't bring myself to take it off. The scent of him surrounded me, made me feel safe in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't until I was in my car, driving home through the snowy streets with Christmas lights blurring past my windows, that I let myself look at the card again. Just a number. No name, no explanation. I pressed it against my chest and wondered what I had just stumbled into. And why, despite every logical bone in my body screaming at me to throw the card away, I knew I would keep it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my tiny apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling while the radiator clanked and hissed in the corner. Dante's jacket hung on the back of my door, a dark silhouette that seemed to watch me in the dim light filtering through my curtains. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, those bottomless dark eyes, the way his hand had felt against my cheek, the quiet authority in his voice that had made Marcus crumble like wet paper. The card sat on my nightstand, its presence somehow louder than the traffic noise outside. By the time weak winter sunlight crept across my floor, I'd convinced myself it had all been a fever dream. Men like that didn't exist in real life. They certainly didn't appear out of nowhere to rescue struggling waitresses from their pathetic ex-boyfriends. But the jacket was real. The bruises forming on my arm were real. And when I picked up the card, the embossed numbers caught the morning light. Solid and undeniable. I had to return the jacket. That's what decent people did. They didn't keep expensive items that belonged to strangers, no matter how earth-shatteringly attractive those strangers were. The problem was, I had no idea how to find him. No last name, no address, just a phone number I was too terrified to call. I was wrestling with this dilemma over burnt toast and instant coffee when my phone rang. Unknown number. My heart stopped. Hello? My voice came out rougher than intended. Miss Emma? A man's voice, formal and professional. Not Dante. This is James. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Moretti. He wanted to ensure you arrived home safely last night. Mr. Moretti. So that was his last name. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. Excellent. Mr. Moretti also wanted me to inform you that his jacket, will be collected this afternoon if that's convenient. Someone will arrive at 2 o'clock. I glanced at my ancient microwave clock. That gave me 3 hours. How do you know my address? A pause. Mr. Moretti has access to certain resources. I hope that doesn't alarm you. It should have. It absolutely should have terrified me. Instead, something warm unfurled in my chest. Dangerous and intoxicating. He'd made sure I got home safely. He'd thought about me after he left. 2 o'clock is fine, I heard myself say. Perfect. Someone will be there promptly. The line went dead. I spent the next 3 hours in a panic, cleaning my apartment with the kind of manic energy that comes from knowing someone from a different world was about to see how I actually lived. Not that whoever came would care about my threadbare furniture or the way my kitchen faucet dripped no matter how tight I turned it, but I cared. God help me. I cared what they would think, what they would report back to Dante. At exactly 2 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find one of the men who had flanked Dante last night, tall, built like he could break me in half without effort, wearing a dark suit despite the casual hour. His eyes swept over me, assessing, then moved past to scan my apartment. Miss Emma, I'm here for Mr. Moretti's jacket. I nodded, retrieving it from the door. The fabric was still warm from where winter sunlight had hit it, still carried that intoxicating scent. I held it out, and the man took it with a nod. Mr. Moretti also asked me to give you this. He produced a slim box, wrapped in black paper with a silver ribbon. My hands shook as I took it. I can't accept... It would be rude to refuse. His expression didn't change, but something in his tone suggested this wasn't optional. Mr. Moretti is not a man who takes rejection well. He left before I could argue, his footsteps heavy on the stairs leading down from my second-floor walk-up. I closed the door and stared at the box. Everything in me screamed not to open it, to return it, to forget last night had ever happened. Men who inspired that kind of fear, who had people call ahead and knew your address without asking. Those weren't the kind of men you got involved with. But my fingers were already pulling at the ribbon. Inside, nestled in black tissue paper, was a phone. Top of the line, expensive, nothing like my cracked screen disaster. A note lay beneath it, written in elegant handwriting, so I can reach you, and you can reach me. D. My breath caught. This was too much, too personal, too everything. I should have called that number and told whoever answered that I couldn't accept such an expensive gift. Instead, I found myself setting up the phone, watching as it synced and loaded. Only one contact was already saved. Dante. As if summoned by the thought, the phone buzzed in my hand. A text message. Did you sleep well? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to ignore it, to put the phone away, to go back to my normal life where I was safe and invisible and alone. Instead, I typed, "Not really." The response came within seconds. Neither did I. I kept thinking about the fear in your eyes. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wasn't afraid of you. I know. That's what concerns me. I stared at those words, trying to decipher their meaning. Before I could respond, another message appeared. Have dinner with me tonight. It wasn't a question. Just like everything else about Dante, it was a statement, a certainty, as if my agreement was already assumed. I should have said no. I should have asked 100 questions. Who he was, what he did, why he was interested in someone like me. Instead, my treacherous fingers typed, "Where? I'll send a car at 7. wear something comfortable, and that was it. No address, no details, just another command wrapped in the illusion of choice. I spent the rest of the afternoon alternating between panic and a strange, fluttering anticipation. I tried on every piece of clothing I owned, which wasn't many, before settling on a simple black dress that was my nicest outfit, the one I wore to job interviews and funerals. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and pressed, and made me look less like someone drowning in bills and exhaustion. At 6:50, I was pacing my apartment, second-guessing everything. At 6:55, I was reaching for my old phone to call it off. At 7 exactly, there was a knock on my door. The man standing there wasn't the same guard from earlier. This one was older, silver hair, wearing a driver's cap, and a kind expression that seemed almost out of place. "Miss Emma? I'm Marco. Mr. Moretti sent me to collect you." Collect. Like I was a package. But Marco's smile was warm, grandfatherly, and somehow that made it easier to follow him down to the street. The car waiting was exactly what I'd expected. Black, sleek, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Marco opened the back door for me, and I slid into leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The interior smelled like leather, and that same cologne Dante wore. My stomach flipped. We drove through the city as evening settled in. Christmas lights twinkling in windows and on street corners. I watched my neighborhood give way to better ones, buildings getting taller and cleaner, the streets wider and less crowded. We passed through downtown, then kept going, heading toward the part of the city where I'd only ever been for catering jobs. Finally, Marco pulled through a gate that required a security code, down a long driveway lined with bare trees, and stopped in front of a house that made my apartment building look like a cardboard box. It wasn't a mansion. That would be too obvious. It was something more subtle, more expensive. Modern architecture with massive windows, clean lines, and the kind of understated elegance that screamed old money, even though I suspected Dante's wealth was anything but old. Marco opened my door, and I stepped out on shaking legs. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you inside, straight through the main entrance." The front door opened before I could knock, and I found myself face to face with a woman in her 50s, elegant and composed, wearing what looked like staff uniform but somehow making it look haute couture. "Miss Emma, welcome, I'm Teresa. Please come in." The interior was even more intimidating than the exterior. High ceilings, marble floors, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums. Everything was done in shades of black, white, and gray, with occasional splashes of deep red that made me think of blood and roses. Teresa led me through the house, past a living room with furniture that looked too perfect to sit on, past a kitchen that belonged in a magazine spread, and finally to a dining room that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, the lights spread below like fallen stars. A table was set for two, candles flickering, casting dancing shadows across white linens and crystal glasses. And standing by the window, hands in his pockets, was Dante. He'd changed since last night. No suit jacket now, just dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle and marked with what looked like the edge of a tattoo. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and in the candlelight, he looked younger, almost vulnerable. Then he turned and looked at me, and that illusion shattered. There was nothing vulnerable about those eyes. "Emma." My name was a caress on his lips. "You came." "You didn't give me much choice," I said, trying for levity and failing. His smile was slow, predatory. "You could have said no." "Could I?" "No." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping just close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. I wouldn't have allowed it. The honesty should have terrified me. Instead, it sent heat pooling in my stomach, dangerous and unwelcome. "Why am I here?" I whispered. Dante reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, the touch achingly gentle, "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since last night. Because when I close my eyes, I see that bastard's hand on your arm, and I want to break every bone in his body because something about you calls to something in me, and I've learned not to ignore my instincts." His thumb traced along my jawline, and I shivered despite the warmth of the room. "I don't understand," I breathed. You don't need to understand. You just need to trust me. I don't know you. Then let me show you who I am. His hand dropped away, leaving me cold. Sit, eat, talk to me, and then decide if you want to run. He pulled out a chair for me, the gesture at odds with everything else about him. I sat, because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore, and watched as he took the seat across from me. Teresa appeared with the first course, something that smelled divine and looked like art on a plate. I picked up my fork with trembling hands. "Tell me about yourself," Dante said, his eyes never leaving my face. "There's nothing to tell. I'm nobody. You're somebody to me." The intensity in his voice made me look up. "And I want to know everything," so I told him. About my parents dying when I was 19. About the student loans I couldn't pay off. About working 3 jobs and still barely making rent. I told him things I'd never told anyone, words spilling out of me like water from a broken dam, and he listened with an attention that felt like being held. When I finally ran out of words, he reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was warm, calloused in a way that suggested he wasn't just a man who ordered people around. "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. "Survivors always are." "What about you?" I asked, emboldened by wine and his touch. "Who are you, Dante Moretti?" Something flickered across his face. Too quick to read, but dark and complex. "I'm someone who takes what he wants and protects what's his. I'm not yours." His grip on my hand tightened, just slightly. "Not yet." The promise in those words sent electricity racing down my spine. I should have pulled away. Should have run. Instead, I held his gaze and asked the question that had been burning in my mind since last night. "What do you do?" "For a living." Dante smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I solve problems, and I never leave loose ends." It wasn't an answer. It was a warning, and I was too far gone to heed it. The days that followed blurred together like watercolors in rain. Dante didn't just pursue me, he consumed me. Text messages arrived at all hours, some sweet, some commanding, all impossible to ignore. Flowers appeared at my apartment. Not roses, but strange, beautiful blooms I couldn't name. Dark petals that matched his eyes. The catering company called to tell me I'd been given a month's paid leave. A gift from a generous client that we both knew came from him. I should have been angry. Should have felt manipulated, controlled. Instead, I felt seen for the first time in years. He took me to places I'd only ever glimpsed from the outside. Restaurants where the staff knew his name and feared his displeasure. Private art galleries after hours where we walked alone among paintings worth millions. A jazz club where the musicians played whatever he requested with nervous smiles. But it was the small moments that undid me. The way he'd text to make sure I'd eaten. How his hand always found the small of my back, possessive and protective. The darkness in his eyes when another man looked at me too long, a darkness that should have frightened me but instead made me feel precious. Coveted. 2 weeks after that first dinner, I still didn't know exactly what he did. His phone rang constantly. He'd step away, speak in rapid Italian, return with tension in his shoulders and shadows in his expression. Men appeared to give him reports, their voices hushed and respectful. Marco drove us everywhere in cars I suspected were bulletproof, and I pretended not to notice the way Dante's guards checked rooms before we entered them. I was willfully blind, drunk on attention, and the intoxicating feeling of being wanted by someone like him. It was a Wednesday afternoon when reality came crashing back. I was at the grocery store, my neighborhood market, with its flickering lights and cracked linoleum, when I saw her. The woman in red from the Christmas party, Marcus's date, standing near the produce section with her phone pressed to her ear. I tried to duck away, but she'd already seen me. Well, her voice dripped venom. If it isn't the little waitress playing Cinderella. I kept walking, but she followed, her heels clicking against the floor. "Does your sugar daddy know you still shop at places like this? Or is the allowance not as generous as you hoped?" Heat flooded my cheeks. "Leave me alone. Marcus told everyone, you know, about how you're spreading your legs for some gangster. Very classy, Emma. Your parents would be so proud." I spun around, fury overriding common sense. "Don't you dare talk about my parents." She smirked, pulling out her phone. "I got pictures of you getting into that ridiculous car last week. Maybe I should post them online. Let everyone see what you really are." My heart stopped. Pictures. Evidence of my time with Dante, something that could expose whatever careful world he'd built around himself. Delete them, I said, my voice shaking. Make me. She tilted her head, enjoying my distress. Or better yet, have your boyfriend make me. Oh, wait. Does he even know your real name? Or are you just another toy he'll throw away when... Is there a problem here? The voice came from behind me, deep, familiar, and laced with a danger that made the air itself feel heavy. I turned to find Dante standing 3 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression perfectly calm, but his eyes were black ice, and something in his stillness screamed violence. How had he known I was here? How had he arrived so fast? The woman's smug expression crumbled. We were just talking. No. Dante stepped closer, positioning himself between us. You were threatening what's mine. There's a difference. I wasn't. She's just a... Give me your phone. It wasn't a request. The woman's hands shook as she held it out. Dante took it, his movements precise and controlled, and I watched as he scrolled through her photos. His jaw tightened when he found what he was looking for. These are the only copies? His voice was soft, conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. She nodded frantically. Dante dropped the phone. The sound of it shattering against the floor echoed through the store. Several shoppers stopped to stare, but one look from him sent them scattering. If you ever approach her again, Dante said, his voice never rising above a murmur. If you speak her name, if you think about her, I will know, and you won't like what happens next. Understand? The woman nodded again, tears streaming down her face, mascara running in black rivers. Then she was running, leaving her broken phone and shopping cart behind. Dante turned to me, his expression softening instantly. Are you all right? I couldn't speak, couldn't process what had just happened. He'd appeared like a guardian demon, demolished a threat without raising his voice, and now stood looking at me with concern, etched across his beautiful features, Emma. His hands cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. Breathe, Kara. You're safe. How did you know I was here? The words came out broken. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe. Or calculation. I always know where you are. The implication hit me like cold water. You're tracking me? Protecting you. There's a difference. That's not... I pulled away from his touch, my mind reeling. You can't just... You don't own me, Dante. His expression hardened. I know that. Then why are you following me? Why do you always know where I am? What the hell are you? People were staring now. Dante noticed, his jaw tightening with frustration. Not here. He reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Tell me the truth. All of it. What you do, who you are, why you're really interested in someone like me. For a long moment, he just looked at me, and I saw a war playing out behind his eyes. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. Marco, pick us up, now. He hung up and looked at me. You want the truth? Fine. But not here, not like this. Come with me. Why should I? Because despite everything your rational mind is telling you, you trust me. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. Because you know that whatever I am, whatever I've done, I would burn this city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you. Because you've felt it too, Emma, this thing between us that defies logic and reason. He was right. God help me. He was right. Marco pulled up minutes later, and I found myself getting into the car because the alternative, walking away, felt like cutting off my own limbs. We didn't go to his house. Instead, Marco drove us to a building downtown, nondescript and professional, with security that nodded to Dante without questions. He led me to an elevator that required a key card, then up to the top floor. The office we entered was elegant and cold. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface empty except for a laptop and a crystal decanter of what looked like whiskey. Dante poured 2 glasses without asking, handed me one, then leaned against the desk. My family came from Sicily 3 generations ago, he began, his voice flat. factual. They brought old traditions, old loyalties, and old ways of making money. My grandfather built an empire on those foundations. My father expanded it, and when they died, murdered by rivals when I was 23, I inherited everything. He took a drink, his eyes never leaving mine. I run businesses, import, export, real estate, construction, all legitimate on paper. But beneath that, he paused, weighing his words. Beneath that, I control territories. I settle disputes that can't be settled in courts. I protect people who pay for protection, and I eliminate problems that threaten my interests. I am what your movies call a mafia boss, though the reality is far more complex and far less romantic than Hollywood suggests. The room spun. I gripped the glass harder, the crystal cold against my palm. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman operating in a world where laws are suggestions and loyalty is currency. He set down his glass and crossed his arms. I've killed men, Emma. I've ordered deaths and delivered them myself. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the details, but I've also protected thousands of people, built schools in neighborhoods the government abandoned, made sure families could bury their dead with dignity. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked. Because I won't build something with you on lies. He pushed off the desk, closing the distance between us. And because I need you to understand what you're getting into before this goes any further. What I'm getting into. My voice cracked. I'm not getting into anything. This is insane. You're insane. Perhaps. His hand came up to cut my cheek, and I should have pulled away but couldn't. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night. You. Broken and brave, standing there while that coward tried to humiliate you. Something in you called to something in me, and I am not a man who ignores instincts. I'm nobody, I whispered. Just a waitress with student loans and a crappy apartment. Why would someone like you want someone like me? Because you're real. His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath hitched. Because in a world of lies and performances, you're genuine. Because when I touch you, you don't calculate what you can get from me. You just feel. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Tears burned my eyes. I can't be part of your world. You already are. His other hand found my waist, pulling me closer. The moment I claimed you in that ballroom, you became mine. There's no going back from that, Kara. The only question is whether you fight it or accept it. That's not a choice. No, he agreed, his lips hovering inches from mine. It's the inevitability. He kissed me then, and it wasn't gentle or questioning. It was possession, pure and simple. His mouth claiming mine with a hunger that stole my breath and my sense. I should have pushed him away, should have run. Instead, my hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and I kissed him back with everything I had. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. I can't promise you safety, he murmured. My world is dangerous, and my enemies would use you against me if they knew what you meant to me. But I can promise you protection. I can promise that anyone who tries to hurt you will regret being born. I can promise that as long as you're mine, you'll want for nothing. Except freedom, I said bitterly. Emma. He pulled back enough to look into my eyes. You're more free with me than you've ever been. No more working 3 jobs, no more exhaustion, no more invisible. With me, you're seen, treasured, protected. Tell me that's not a kind of freedom. He was right, and I hated him for it. Hated how he'd identified the desperate hunger in me for someone to care, to see me, to make me matter. Hated how easily he'd wrapped himself around that need and made it impossible to imagine life without him. What do you want from me? I asked. His smile was dark and possessive. Everything. Your time, your attention, your thoughts, your body. I want you in my home, in my bed, in my life. I want the right to protect you, to care for you, to kill anyone who threatens you. I want you, Emma. All of you. And if I say no? His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went cold and flat. Then I'll let you go. And I'll spend every day regretting it while making sure you're safe from a distance. But you won't say no. How do you know? Because you're already mine. You just haven't admitted it yet. The terrifying thing was, he was right. I moved into Dante's house on a gray Saturday morning, 3 weeks after the grocery store confrontation. It wasn't a decision I made consciously. It was more like a series of small surrenders. Staying over one night after dinner ran late, then another because he insisted the roads were icy, then keeping a drawer of clothes in his bedroom. Until one day I realized I hadn't slept in my own apartment in a week. The apartment I no longer had because the lease had mysteriously been bought out, and my belongings appeared in one of Dante's spare bedrooms, professionally packed and organized. I should have been furious. Instead, I felt relieved, and that relief scared me more than anything else. Teresa showed me around the parts of the house I hadn't seen yet, a library with first editions and leather chairs, a gym that looked like something from a magazine, a garden that would be beautiful in spring, but now stood bare and skeletal under winter sky. She was kind, but distant, treating me with a respect that felt unearned. Mr. Moretti is very particular about his space, she said as we passed his office, the one room I was told never to enter without permission. But he's asked that you make yourself at home everywhere else. If you need anything at all, just ask. What I needed was to understand how my life had spiraled so completely out of control in less than a month. What I needed was to figure out if I was living a fairy tale or a nightmare. Dante was different at home. Still commanding, still dangerous, but softer around the edges. He'd find me reading in the library and sit beside me, not speaking, just present. He'd pull me into his lap while he worked through paperwork, one hand absently stroking my hair, while the other signed documents I didn't look at too closely. At night, he'd hold me against his chest, his heartbeat steady under my ear, and whisper things in Italian I didn't understand but felt in my bones. The possessiveness was constant and suffocating and intoxicating. His hand on my lower back wherever we went, the way he'd step between me and any man who looked too long. How he'd text me throughout the day. What are you doing? Have you eaten? I miss the taste of your mouth. I was drowning in him and I'd forgotten how to want air. It was a Tuesday evening when the fragile bubble burst. I was in the kitchen with Teresa, learning to make fresh pasta because I was going insane with nothing to do, when raised voices echoed from Dante's office. Male voices, angry, speaking rapid Italian that I couldn't follow. Teresa's hands stilled in the flour. You should go upstairs. What's happening? Please, Miss Emma. Mr. Moretti wouldn't want you to... The office door slammed open. Dante emerged, fury etched into every line of his body, followed by 2 men I'd never seen before. One was older, silver-haired and expensive-suited, radiating authority. The other was younger, maybe Dante's age, handsome in a cold way that made my skin crawl. You can't keep her here like a pet, Dante. The younger man's voice was mocking, his eyes sliding over me with obvious disdain. She's a liability. Everyone knows about her now. Your enemies, your allies, they're all wondering what could make Dante Moretti so stupid. Dante moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was standing near the office. The next his hand was wrapped around the man's throat, slamming him against the wall hard enough to rattle the expensive artwork. Say that again, Dante growled, his voice lethal. Call her a liability one more time and I'll cut out your tongue and feed it to you. Dante! The older man stepped forward, hands raised. He's your cousin, and he's not wrong. The girl has made you vulnerable. The girl, Dante said, not releasing his grip, is under my protection, which means she's under the family's protection. Anyone who suggests otherwise is volunteering to find out what happens when they cross me. He released his cousin, who gasped and stumbled away, hand to his throat. Dante's eyes found mine across the room, and something in his expression cracked. Emma. Upstairs. Now, I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but the violence still crackling in the air made me obey. I fled to the bedroom we shared, my hands shaking as I closed the door behind me. I could still hear them shouting, more Italian, more anger, words that sounded like threats and ultimatums. Then silence, heavy and ominous, followed by footsteps on the stairs. Dante entered the bedroom, his shirt partially untucked, hair disheveled from running his hands through it. There was blood on his knuckles, not much, just a split that suggested he'd hit something after I left. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked quietly. I should have lied. Should have said yes. Should have used his moment of vulnerability to create distance. Instead, I told the truth. No. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me against him with a desperation that stole my breath. His face buried in my hair, his arms tight enough to hurt. "They want me to send you away," he murmured against my temple. "They say you make me weak, that my enemies will use you against me. They say I'm risking everything we've built for a woman I barely know." My heart cracked. Maybe they're right. They're not. He pulled back enough to look at me, his hands framing my face. "You don't make me weak. You make me focused, ruthless. Because now I have something worth protecting, something worth burning the world down for. Dante, I'm not." "You are." His thumb traced my lower lip. "You're everything, Emma, and I will not let anyone take you from me. Not my family, not my enemies, not even you yourself." The intensity in his eyes should have terrified me. Instead, it ignited something primal in my chest, something that had been sleeping my entire life until he'd woken it. "What happens now?" I whispered. "Now we prove them wrong." His lips brushed mine, gentle despite the violence still humming under his skin. "Now I show them that you're not my weakness. You're my strength." He made love to me that night with a tenderness that contradicted everything I knew about him. His hands worshipful, his mouth speaking promises in Italian between kisses, and when I fell asleep in his arms, I dreamed of cages made of silk and chains forged from devotion. The next morning, everything changed. I woke to an empty bed and voices downstairs. Too many voices, urgent and tense. I dressed quickly in jeans and one of Dante's shirts, then crept to the top of the stairs. The house was full of men, armed men, I realized with a jolt of fear. They stood in the foyer, in the hallways, speaking into radios and checking weapons with the casual efficiency of soldiers. Marco appeared at the bottom of the stairs, his grandfatherly face tight with worry. "Miss Emma, you should stay upstairs." "What's happening?" "There's been a situation. Mr. Moretti is handling it." "What kind of situation?" Before he could answer, Dante emerged from his office, phone pressed to his ear, wearing a suit that somehow made him look more dangerous than when he was casual. His eyes found mine, and something in them made my blood run cold. He ended the call and climbed the stairs, taking my arm and guiding me back into the bedroom. The door closed with a definitive click. "Pack a bag," he said, his voice clipped, professional. "Enough for a week." "What? Why?" "Because my cousin decided to prove his point by leaking information about you to some very dangerous people. People who think they can get to me through you." He moved to the closet, pulling out a duffel bag. "You're not safe here anymore. Not until I've dealt with this." Fear clawed up my throat. Dealt with how? He turned to face me, and the man looking back wasn't the one who'd held me tenderly last night. This was the Mafia boss, cold and calculating and utterly ruthless. "However necessary." He came back to me, his hands on my shoulders. "I'm sending you somewhere safe, somewhere no one knows about. Marco will take you, and guards will watch over you until this is resolved." "No." The word burst out of me. "No. I'm not leaving you to clean up a mess that exists because of me. Emma." "He's right, isn't he? Your cousin. I am a liability. I'm the reason you're in danger." Dante's grip tightened. "You're the reason I have something to fight for. There's a difference. Let me go." The words tasted like ash. "Let me disappear. I'll leave the city, change my name, and you can go back to your life without—" He kissed me, hard and possessive, cutting off my words. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. "I would rather die than let you go. Do you understand? I would burn everything I've built, kill everyone I know, destroy myself completely before I let you walk away." His forehead pressed against mine. "You're mine, Emma. Mine to protect, mine to keep, mine to love. And I will not lose you. Then let me stay. Let me face this with you." "No." The word was final. "I can't think clearly if I'm worried about you being in danger. I can't do what needs to be done if I'm distracted by keeping you safe. So you're going to pack a bag, and you're going to go with Marco, and you're going to trust that I will handle this." And then what? His smile was dark and dangerous. And then I'm going to eliminate every threat to you, make an example of my cousin, and bring you home where you belong. There was no arguing with that tone. I packed mechanically, throwing clothes into the bag without really seeing them. Dante watched from the doorway, phone constantly buzzing, his jaw tight with tension. When I was done, he pulled me into his arms one last time. "I need you to promise me something," he murmured into my hair. "What?" "That you won't try to run. That you won't convince yourself this is too much and disappear while I'm fixing this." His arms tightened. "Promise me you'll wait for me. I should have used this opportunity to escape. Should have lied and planned my exit." Instead, I said, "I promise." Because somewhere between that first night and now, I'd stopped being Emma the waitress, Emma the survivor, Emma who existed on the edges of everyone else's life. I'd become his, and that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Marco drove me out of the city as dawn broke, 2 SUVs full of guards flanking us. I watched Dante's house disappear in the rearview mirror and wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, or if the biggest mistake had been walking into that Christmas party 4 weeks ago and catching the attention of a man who didn't know how to love anything except possessively, violently, completely. Either way, it was too late to turn back now. The safe house was a cabin 2 hours north of the city, buried in woods so dense the winter sunlight barely penetrated. It was comfortable in a utilitarian way, warm, well-stocked, with guards stationed outside that I pretended not to see through the windows. Marco stayed the first night, his presence oddly comforting. He made me tea and didn't ask questions when I couldn't eat, just sat quietly in the armchair by the fire like a benevolent grandfather. "He'll fix this," Marco said finally, breaking the silence. "Mr. Moretti always fixes things." "By killing people?" The words came out bitter. Marco's expression didn't change. "By protecting what's his. There's a difference, Miss Emma. In his world, mercy is weakness. Hesitation gets you buried. He's kept his family safe for 10 years because he's willing to do what others won't. I don't belong in that world. Maybe not. But you belong to him, and that's what matters." He left the next morning, leaving me with guards whose names I didn't know, and silence that felt suffocating. Dante called twice a day, morning and night, like clockwork, his voice tense but controlled. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Are they treating you well?" "Yes." "I miss you." This part was always softer, the armor cracking just slightly. "This house is empty without you. How long?" I'd ask, even though I knew he wouldn't answer. "Soon, I promise," but soon stretched into days, 4 days of isolation, of staring at the same walls, of wondering what was happening in the city, of imagining Dante in danger and being unable to do anything about it. On the 5th day, everything changed. I woke to the sound of vehicles, multiple engines, tires crunching on frozen ground. Too many vehicles. The guards outside started shouting, and then came sounds that would haunt me forever. Gunshots, sharp and violent in the quiet morning. I ran to the window, my heart in my throat, and saw chaos. Black SUVs surrounded the cabin, men in dark clothes emerging with weapons drawn. The guards were fighting back, but they were outnumbered, outgunned. This wasn't Dante's people. This was the threat he'd been trying to protect me from. Terror locked my limbs. I should run, hide, do something. But I was frozen, watching as one of the guards fell, blood blooming red against white snow. The front door exploded inward. 3 men entered, and the one in front smiled when he saw me. Cold, calculated. The smile of a predator cornering prey. "Emma, isn't it?" His English carried a thick accent. "Dante's little pet. He's been very busy lately, cleaning up messes, killing people, making statements." He stepped closer, and I backed away until I hit the wall. "He forgot that while he was hunting, someone might be hunting what he values most. He'll kill you," I whispered. "Probably. But first we're going to send him a message, and you're going to deliver it." He reached for me, and something inside me snapped. I wasn't the terrified waitress anymore. Wasn't the woman who let Marcus humiliate her without fighting back. Dante had awakened something in me, something fierce and desperate to survive. I grabbed the lamp from the side table and swung with everything I had. It connected with his temple, glass shattering, and he staggered back with a roar. His companions surged forward, but I was already running, racing for the back door through the kitchen. I burst outside into freezing air, my breath clouding, feet slipping on ice. The woods loomed ahead, dark, dangerous, but my only option. Behind me, men shouted in a language I didn't understand. I ran. Branches tore at my clothes, my hair, my skin. The cold burned my lungs. I had no coat, no phone, no idea where I was going. I just ran, driven by pure survival instinct, until my legs gave out and I collapsed behind a fallen tree, gasping, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. Voices echoed through the woods. They were searching, methodical, spreading out. I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle my breathing, tears freezing on my cheeks. This was how I died, alone in the woods, killed by men whose names I didn't know, because I'd been stupid enough to fall for someone whose world was violence. Then I heard it. Different engines, more vehicles, and a sound that made hope surge painfully in my chest. Dante's voice, sharp and commanding, cutting through the winter air like a blade. "Find her! Now!" I wanted to call out, but fear kept me silent. What if his enemies heard first? What if I led them right to me? The decision was made for me. A hand clamped over my mouth from behind, and I was hauled upright, pressed against a body that reeked of cigarettes and sweat. "Found her, boss!" the man holding me shouted. Everything happened at once. Dante appeared through the trees like an avenging angel, his face a mask of fury I'd never seen before. He wasn't alone. A dozen men flanked him, all armed, all moving with lethal precision. The man holding me pressed a gun to my temple. "Don't move, Moretti, or I paint the trees with her brains." Dante stopped, but his eyes, God, his eyes, burned with something beyond rage, beyond violence. This was primal, possessive fury that promised death, and worse than death. Let her go. Each word was precisely enunciated, vibrating with barely controlled violence. Drop your weapons first. No. Dante's gun stayed aimed at the man's head. You're going to release her, and then I'm going to kill you. Those are your only options. The only variable is how much you suffer first. The gun barrel dug harder into my temple. Big talk for a man who... The shot came from somewhere to my left. One of Dante's men, a perfect shot that took the gunman in the shoulder. His grip loosened, and I dropped, hitting the frozen ground hard. Then hell erupted. I covered my head as gunfire exploded around me, deafening, terrifying. It lasted seconds, maybe 10, maybe 20, before silence fell, heavy and final. Strong hands pulled me up, and then I was in Dante's arms, his body shaking as much as mine, his hands running over me frantically, checking for injuries. Emma, look at me. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Emma, answer me. I'm okay. I managed through chattering teeth. I'm okay, He kissed me desperately, his mouth claiming mine with a hunger that spoke of fear and relief and possession so complete, it should have frightened me. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. I thought I lost you, he whispered, his forehead pressed to mine. When they told me the safe house was compromised, when I couldn't reach you, I thought I'd failed you. You didn't. You came. I will always come for you. His hands cupped my face, thumbs wiping away my tears. Always, Emma. You're mine. Mine to protect, mine to keep, mine to love, and I will burn down the entire world before I let anyone take you from me again. Around us, his men were dealing with bodies, speaking into radios. But I only had eyes for him, for this dangerous, possessive, violent man who'd somehow become my entire world. Take me home, I whispered. Relief flashed across his face. Home? Your home. Our home. Whatever this is, whatever we are, I'm done running from it. I'm done pretending I don't want this, don't want you, despite how insane it all is. Dante lifted me into his arms, carrying me through the woods like I weighed nothing. You're sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be mine completely, my world, my life, my darkness, all of it. I I looked into those bottomless dark eyes and made my choice. I've been yours since that first night. I just didn't want to admit it. His smile was fierce, possessive, and achingly tender. Then let's go home, cara mia. 3 months later, I stood in the garden behind Dante's house, our house, watching as spring finally broke through winter's grip. Crocuses pushed through the last patches of snow, brave and beautiful, reaching for weak sunlight. Life had settled into something resembling normalcy, if normalcy could exist in a world of armed guards and hushed phone calls. I'd learned to navigate Dante's darkness, to accept the parts of his life I couldn't change, and find peace in the parts I could. Teresa taught me to cook properly. Marco told me stories about Dante as a boy, painting pictures of a child forced to grow up too fast, to become hard too young. And Dante himself slowly revealed layers I hadn't known existed. His love of classical music, the way he supported families whose breadwinners worked for him, his fierce protection of those he considered his. His cousin had disappeared. Dante never told me what happened, and I never asked. Some questions were better left unspoken. The men who'd attacked the safe house were never found. Or rather, they were found but in pieces, scattered across locations that sent a message to anyone else who might consider threatening what belonged to Dante Moretti. I should have been horrified, should have been disgusted. Instead, I felt safe in a way I'd never experienced before. Arms wrapped around me from behind, and I leaned back into Dante's embrace, breathing in his familiar scent. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against my hair. "How insane my life has become." "Regrets." I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd claimed me, changed me, made me his in every way that mattered. Not a single one. His smile was slow and devastating. "Good, because I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Velvet, dark green, expensive. My heart stopped. "Dante, let me finish." He opened it, revealing a ring that took my breath away. An emerald surrounded by diamonds, old-world elegance that somehow felt perfectly right. "I know we did this backwards. I claimed you before courting you, possessed you before earning you, but I'm asking now, properly. Marry me, Emma. Be mine in every way. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, worshipping you, loving you the only way I know how." Tears blurred my vision. "That's not a question." "No," he agreed, slipping the ring onto my finger. "It's a statement of fact. You're already mine. This just makes it official." I should have argued about his arrogance, his presumption. Instead, I kissed him, pouring everything I felt into it. All the fear and passion and desperate, impossible love that had grown between us. "Yes," I whispered against his mouth. "Yes, you impossible, possessive, wonderful man. Yes." His arms tightened around me, and I felt him smile. "Mine." "Yours," I agreed. "Always yours." And standing there in our garden, surrounded by guards I no longer noticed, and luxury I'd stopped questioning, held by a man who loved me with a violence and devotion that defied logic, I realized something profound. I'd walked into that Christmas party invisible, broken, alone. And I'd walked out claimed by a monster who loved me like I was precious, irreplaceable, worth burning the world for. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd once dreamed of. It was darker, more dangerous, infinitely more complicated, but it was mine. He was mine, and I was finally, completely his. Some cages, I'd learned, were meant to be walked into willingly. Some chains were forged from devotion rather than imprisonment. And some monsters loved so fiercely that being possessed by them felt like freedom. Dante pulled me closer, his lips finding mine again, and I surrendered to it, to him, to us, to this impossible, beautiful, terrifying love that had saved me from invisibility and given me a place where I mattered, where I was seen, where I was home.